Welcome to the Change Life Destiny podcast, where healthcare is being reimagined one conversation at a time. We spotlight the people, innovations, and ideas moving us from sick care to self-care and from reactivity to true prevention. This season was recorded live at the CLD conference, a place to connect, learn, and build a new future together. Get inspired at changelifedestiny.com. Let's dive in.
Hello, friends, and welcome to the Changing Life and Destiny Conference. I'm your host, Dr. Chris Motley, host of the Ancient Health Podcast. Really great that I'm able to come down here, do some hosting, do some podcasting. And I have a friend here with me today, and we're going to talk about a lot of cool stuff. Dr. Leila Doolittle, she is based out of here in Dallas, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And we became friends through our friend Dr. Java Moore at another conference. First of all, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yes, I'm so honored to be here.
It's really great. And we wanted to talk about, for everybody listening, we want to talk about functional neurology. There's functional neurology. We wanted to talk about chronic, difficult cases, and even bioenergetics. Now, I'm not saying we get over all of these, but this is going to lead into something I think that'll be very interesting, because when we look at all the ways that the brain, mind, higher mind come together, I think it's a really interesting field.
It definitely is.
And I'm not saying I know a lot about that. All I'm saying is we're going to ask the doc here about it. One of the first things, though, that I'm really always interested in is the story behind the person who's here, why they got into what they're here doing.
Yes.
But you don't have to even go that deep. I just want to know a little bit about you.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit?
Yes. Well, it's really easy. So my story was the entire reason for my specialties. And it was with my own health journey. I was exposed to toxic black mold at age 13, started having a few health concerns. I was super healthy before that. And then I got interested in functional nutrition at a very young age. So I was already taking supplements and vitamins just to help myself for several years.
At a young age?
Yes. Thankfully, my mom was into nutrition as well. And so she raised us on vitamins.
Wow.
We never visited a doctor. We were totally 100% unvaccinated the entire time. We had just a pure and healthy natural childhood, eating as many food as medicine type approaches as possible.
Wow.
So yeah, it was like a blissful childhood. And then my health went downhill just with living in this one farmhouse that we were in and being exposed to that toxic mold. That's whenever I started having health concerns. So I was interested, intrigued, and went further with what my mom was already teaching me with nutrition.
Yeah.
Then at age 16, I had a car accident.
16?
Yes. And my car accident led to a really severe concussion and a near-death experience.
What?
And that's where I was fascinated with consciousness, because my consciousness was in another place besides my body in that moment during that trauma. And it was interesting because for about 8 hours, I was in like a coma for a moment. And it was about 30 minutes until they were able to revive me and get me back. But my body, even though my body was responding, I was in total amnesia and my consciousness was still in another realm.
Did you, and I'm not taking away, guys, from the conversation, when you were at that time, because this is really interesting, were you floating above your body, or were you in another spot, like in heaven?
It was a completely other place. Like I didn't have that moment of worrying about my body or staying in the present place in the car accident. It was immediately, I was in this beautiful, blissful, peaceful light. It was so just serene. And it's just so beautiful to experience, because I know that's how many near-death experiences are. They're just, it's indescribable, yet it's everything blissful.
Blissful? Like,
yes.
I mean, this is really, I'm so, NDEs, I always think that when the transition, you had the accident and you were going to the coma, did you find yourself like in the place, like there wasn't like, it was almost like you woke up in that place?
Yes. Zero consciousness of what was going on with my body at all. And my consciousness went immediately to that white place. Like I just was awakened into it. Yeah.
Okay, we're going to dive deep in this. When you had that event, and now you had the black mold, and then you had the accident, and we were going to talk about the near-death experience of consciousness, but you wake up and then you start having really bad problems?
Yes, because after about 8 hours, I did come to, and I was aware enough to be able to sign myself out of the hospital.
Heavens.
And, there were many complexities to it, where they had to transfer me to another neurological clinic because my case was so severe. I had an hemorrhaging across the frontal and parietal lobes on the right side. And so thankfully, everything started correcting very quickly, and I was able to check myself out, as I didn't want to go through intracranial surgery of any type of releasing the pressure or anything. I wanted to just maintain everything intact and knew that my body could heal. So as soon as I was consciously aware and able to get myself signed out of the hospital, I did. And then just the healing process started. Of course, with concussions, blood-brain barriers opened. Therefore, everything else that was in my body, my own immune system was still dysfunctional because of the toxic mold. And that's where I started having more health concerns for the months afterwards.
So when it seeped into the blood-brain barrier, you started having neurological deficits and issues right off the bat? What were some of the things you noticed?
It was definitely concussion syndrome because it was a severe concussion. So it was I had actually injured my eye extensively on the right side as well, fractured the orbital bones above and below. And then the sclera was red, and I was actually almost blind in the eye for a few months afterwards, where it was just decreased sensory perception. And so with that, I was having migraines, severe headaches, and those weren't going away as the pressure resolved in the brain. And then it was just, the oscillations of the eyes that's very typical for the movements of the eyes. Whenever a concussion happens and it's severe, then it's hard for the eyes to stay just on one target. And for me, and I'm an avid reader, so as a child, we grew up without TVs, without movies, without anything that would distract us. We read books for fun. That was my entire childhood. So I read thousands of books up to this point. And then that one joy, that huge hobby of mine was taken away from me because I couldn't read my books. So things like that, focus concentration more so just because of the concussion syndrome. And then because my health concerns were already there from before, from the fatigue and insomnia and things like that from the toxic mold, that's where I just absolutely knew I would become a doctor as a specialist of this chronic infection illness cases with toxic mold and Lyme's disease or whatever else other patients are dealing with that are struggling, and then also a functional neurologist, because then I could heal my brain, learn the neuroplasticity that it takes to rewire everything and correct it.
Heavens. I mean, no, kudos to you. I'm seriously learning that much. When you got to that point, when you knew something was going on, since you were raised in such a really cool environment, and your mom's there and such, and you think, do you have an idea after the concussion, you're having concussion syndrome, and your parents are okay, we need to go find somebody who can help you with your neurology or help you with the mold? Is that what happened, or did you have to find a specialist in your area or anything like that?
The difficult thing is that we didn't know about these types of specialists. It was complex and
I would think
hard to find.
I didn't know about these till a few years ago, basically.
And so it was more of just, I actually started at school in pre-med knowing exactly what I was going to do, and started learning as much as possible. Just read every single text that I could possibly read, started reaching out to mentors to take me on so that I could learn how to heal myself. And it was a chiropractor actually that helped me to find my way to functional neurology, as I didn't even know that this was a field. At the time, it was a very new field. Dr. Ted Carrick had just started really building this, and so I hadn't found my way to it yet. And so the two neurologists that I'd seen before tried to push medications my way. Of course, I denied them, refused, because I wouldn't put something foreign, something toxic in my body. And so then that was not a solution. I just kept on taking my herbs, supplements, really became a nutritionist before anything while I was in pre-med, and that helped me get through.
Wow. And we're going to go back to Dr. Carrick and when you went functional neurology, because there's a lot of layers to this. When you got out and said, you had such bad headaches, you had mold, when you first started out, were there, and I'm not trying to say the top 5 things, I'm saying what were some of the things that helped you with your pain if you didn't take medication? What helped you with getting rid of some of the mold?
With the pain, it was lifestyle approaches, because it was in the fluorescent lights that I had the severe migraines and headaches. And it was, of course, sitting in school in my pre-med studies, I had to be in those types of lights just to get through the classes. But then I would practice a lot of like red light therapy, and
even back in the day.
Yes, and circadian rhythm shifts, waking up and seeing the sunrise, like watching directly as it's coming up and making sure that my eyes were filled with this, and sunset, and just all that nervous system training. And that was thanks to my childhood, because we grew up so naturally. We knew that the rhythms of the earth can heal you. And
did it help your eyes?
It did. It definitely did.
Wow. No, I mean, I'm really so impressed with this. When you started to implement this and you started to find out more about mold, you went to school, go to study, become a doctor. Like, knowing about functional neurology, when you talked to Dr. Carrick, he created like this beautiful clinic. Could you tell us, like, you had the concussion, you had the near-death experience. For people out there, like, what is the importance of functional neurology? Yes. I mean, really, that's a big question. They're like, what do you mean by functional neurology? Yeah.
Yes, it's where everything in the brain is malleable. Every single neural connection, the neural networks, the neuronal poles, they have specific functions that they take care of. And we can optimize those functions with various exercises, therapies, treatment protocols, and it's all simply activating those neuronal poles, whatever they are. So if your eyes are supposed to move in a very smooth way in horizontal pursuit movements, that's the parietal lobe that helps to move them in that way and send the signals through those muscles of the eyes to perform that function perfectly. And if there's an injury to that area into the parietal lobe, or if there's an issue with the nutrition to that area, if there aren't enough building blocks, if there's something where there's toxins that have crossed the blood-brain barrier, then that's where there can be issues with that specific function.
Wow.
Yeah. And so then that's what we can do, is just simple little exercises stacked to help with stimulating the neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity is when two neurons are growing together, and then the synapses are able to connect more synapses, and we grow more synapses when we use those areas more.
So synapses would be where two nerves literally can grow towards each other.
Yes.
And then they can transmit signals to get each other.
Exactly.
So if a person has an injury, the injury could stay in their brain or in their body because there's no communication occurring that would actually help them heal the injury.
Yes.
And then you can do exercises to create new pathways to get closer to each other to actually cause firing.
Yes.
It'd always be like an old car engine that you finally found a wire and you're like, well, that one's not touching this wire, so I cut.
That's good. That's a great reference.
So this is like what people out there, because, you know, like some people have concussions out there.
Yes.
And they hear your story and they're like, well, I have chronic migraines. Every time, I know you hear this because you're a functional neurologist, but people say, hey, I feel pretty good, but when I look up and to the left, everything spins.
Yes.
And I had a first thought, and I have a functional neurologist friend, and I love it, but I'm not keen at it like you are, and I'm like, you need to go see the doc. So you have neuroplasticity occurring. And I know we're always careful about what we say on camera, but I'm saying, like, you see a really horrible problem. So the brain actually has the ability, you say pliability. That means there's a softness to the brain, and the brain can actually, like, grow.
Yes, it definitely can grow. And that's somewhat in the functional medicine space, too, of just providing the nutrition and the building blocks to actually rehabilitate brain growth. So the brain can regrow, but then the electrical circuitry through the brain, that's that functional neurology part, that we can stimulate those neurons to grow and wire through those areas that we've regrown. So atrophy can be healed.
So the atrophy, like, let's say you had a part of your brain that atrophied, like it'd be old necrotic tissue, necrotic being like broken down, dead. If it did regrow, then you have to rewire that place that regrew because it's kind of forgotten all the wiring.
Exactly. Yes. And toxic black mold and many other chronic illness cases can actually have the same type of thing. It doesn't have to be from a concussion, just from a bruising or an injury to the brain. And that's where I see it oftentimes on functional MRIs. I'll do neuroquants, the quantification measurement, so it can measure specific areas of atrophy and inflammation. And then we know exactly which areas we need to regrow and rebuild. And I oftentimes will see it on the temporal region and around the parietal lobe or the frontal and the lower aspects of the frontal, just because the sinuses are taking in mold quite regularly. If someone's living in a moldy environment, they're breathing it in. Yes. And then those areas are the ones that initially are inflamed if we catch it early on, but most people don't realize until they've had it for months or years,
because
then it's atrophied.
So
to regrow it.
I'm one day I need to do it because I know I had Lyme disease really bad, and I have central serous retinopathy. It's just a term they say. I have some holes in my retina because I know it's from the Lyme, but I know I've got sinus issues. Probably with different microbes. That's beside the point. But the point with okay, this is a better point. They had a big thing about Justin Bieber a long time ago, and they said that he had some eye deviations, and he was like having certain Bell's palsy. But he went to Dr. Amen's clinic and he did some viewing, and they said that he actually had these big concussive parts, like parts of his brain that were like they were necrotic, like they were. I don't say they're dead, and please don't quote me on this, but they said that those areas of his brain like almost had holes in his brain. Is that what happens?
Yes, it does. And then you can regrow it. That's what oftentimes happens is the brain is so intelligent. Our body is so intelligent. It's always innately trying to heal itself. And it's possible that it can regrow with the right nutrition in place, like the right building blocks. It's like a construction site where you provide everything that's needed. The house can go up quickly. If there are missing parts, then we have to wait for the shipments to come in before it can actually be fully built.
Oh, that's great. Great analogy. Now I can remember that.
Yes.
Perfect.
And so that's so important that we're providing those building blocks. And so that's different types of nutrition factors, whatever that is, those cofactors, the nutrition factors, that's what gives the body the ability to actually regrow and build it. And then the neurology aspects, the functional neurology, creates the electrical circuitry to turn it on, like the lights in the house now turning on, and now the different appliances can start working properly.
That is perfect. So if a person has a concussion or has a serious brain trauma, you get the components, like the building blocks, like the bricks and the mortar. You go and rebuild it with the nutrition, and we'll talk about that. And then you teach, like you put, like it's like if you built a new part of a house and you had to put 2 new wiring in the walls, like you have to like turn on the lights, right? So you do that, so you can train that, so people can actually get can actually start to do different types of maneuvers and such, right? Okay, so what would be? I think nutrition is different for everyone. And I got to be careful because I don't want to keep hitting the thing because I'm going to ruin this whole podcast if I keep hitting the table. Sorry, guys. But what would be some of the main nutrients, though? And I'm not trying to say you have to have a huge list, but are there some certain things, like just basic things that people say, well, this is what my diet needs to help my brain?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. There are like phosphatidylcholine. That's one of the things that we can use to actually see direct evidence of growth neurologically. And that can actually help peripheral nerves as well. Lion's mane, that's a mushroom that can regrow. I think it's like 1 millimeter per year. A peripheral nerve, if it's been severed and cut, it can actually start regrowing powerfully. Yes. And of course in our brain, it's like only a little space that may be needed. So it may be 0.5 millimeter or less. And that's where we're able to create those foundational building blocks. Maybe we need cofactors, just of course the general multivitamin type of thing where people think about your vitamin A, vitamin E, vitamin C, all of those. But the sodium butyrate is another way that we can add in more. Some TUDCA, that's a bile acid that actually helps quite a bit. Resveratrol is powerful for rebuilding the blood-brain barrier.
I didn't know that.
Turmeric, back to the foundations and basics. Black pepper and turmeric together, of course, decreases inflammation, but it also helps seal the blood-brain barrier as well. Berberine.
Berberine does it too?
Yes, it does.
Wow, because everybody out there, I am a nerd. I try to become a nerd about herbs. All right, so but berberine would be like golden Chinese coptis, and Japanese knotweed has a lot of resveratrol.
Yes.
And that's why a lot of Lyme disease doctors use that, because it helps rebuild it whenever the Lyme gets in there into the blood-brain barrier, so Lyme disease can get in there. Oh, man.
Yes, I love that.
I'm learning a lot.
And then even ginseng. There are many different strains of ginseng, just like according to locations that they grow. And wherever someone is from or wherever their heritage lineage is.
Korean, thank you.
Nice.
Sorry.
And that's where it's interesting because that type of ginseng can actually help their neurological system significantly. So I grew up going out into the woods in Arkansas and the mountains to find ginseng, hunt and dig the ginseng wild. And it's so potent because it's had to grow itself for years on the side of a mountain.
So You would not strike me as somebody coming from Arkansas. No knock on anybody from Arkansas. I just would never imagine somebody like you come from Arkansas.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go into that another time. Okay, so you found ginseng. You found these things that would help blood-brain barrier. You can actually provide nutrients to help heal up the blood-brain barrier, which would leeway into, like, you had mold.
Yes.
So you're saying, okay, so somebody could have concussion because somebody could have mold in their sinuses and it can actually do some of the same damage?
Yes. And ears, because there is evidence that the inflammation that can happen even outside the ears, it can still cross across the tympanic membrane, especially if they've had ear tubes or if they've had chronic ear infections as a child. Then they have usually, oftentimes, just decreased microbiome protecting them. And so their eardrum or their tympanic membrane itself, that could have some damage to it, or it could just be then enough to allow for crossing. So inflammation of the ears, the sinuses, the mouth, and the eyes. The eyes are moist, and
exactly,
the mold loves moisture. So it's going to adhere to the eyes and regularly affect across the lining.
This is great, because I think everybody out there and listening to this would say, did you ever have an eye infection? Did you ever have an ear infection? Do you ever get gums that bleed or swell or get sore around a particular tooth? You always get a cavity in a certain tooth. I had a friend, and I'm not trying to divert. I had a friend who did ozone, which is oxygen 3, 3 oxygen molecules. And with mold, he would do ozone diffusion in his ears. Like, there's these devices that put it through his ears, and you say tympanic membrane. That guy told me, he's a really quiet dude. He's one of my best buds. And he's like, I've never seen so much junk come out of my head. And he goes, it's been 3 months and it's still coming out.
Wow.
And so, but that would keep on asking for people who've been in moldy houses.
Yeah.
Because let's say, how long were you in the house?
That was about 1.5 years.
So that 1.5 years, you're breathing in mold spores the whole time.
Yes. And I was also very stressed during that time. So that adds a whole other key component to it. Like, I think it's very important for people to know they may be in a moldy house or a moldy environment and they may not be able to get out of it, but to maintain healthy consciousness and mindfulness and mindset during that time, it's very important as resilience and protection against mold and optimization of their immune system.
Wow.
And for me, we were at the time my mother had just remarried, and we had this blended family, and then we were living fully off the land, which that part was very interesting. We were in the middle of the mountains, 100% just growing our own food, living off the land, and that part was okay. It was just stress of my father figure and some other things that was going on with custody battles and things. And what was happening was I was so stressed during that time, as was most of my family. And so that sense of the resilience being lost is actually what made this all have such a powerful impact on my health.
Oh, wow. So I always use the term butcher because I love this way. So when you had your stressful time, like people out there listening said, yes, I've had really stressful times with my family. And you're like, with the mold, you're breathing in mold. And so there's a resiliency in your body. So what you're saying too is that you, without having so much added stress in our conscious world, in our subconscious as well, maybe your body would have had more resiliency to actually keep that mold at bay.
Yes. The immune system, as long as it's optimized and capable, like my microbiome up until that point was perfectly healthy. I, was born naturally, vaginal microbiome, vaginal probiotics. Since birth, I had never taken antibiotics. I had never had any medication whatsoever. And it was just a very healthy childhood. So my immune system would have been healthy enough to handle it most likely. And I know this just because I specialize in this, so many of my cases, thousands of cases I've seen, what's the difference between having resilience and being able to handle an environment? And there's a huge component of this, of course, with genes, and certain genes, HLA genes or whatever, make you so vulnerable. And I think that's so important that we say it's not just the genetics and just what your body is set up for. If you have like a toxic burden bucket that's much smaller, that's oftentimes how you reference it, where you can't handle much as far as toxicity goes, then you have all these symptoms and mold gets you more. it's so important to realize they have the most important power in all of this, and that is in their mindset and their consciousness, and giving that confidence back to their body, into their immune system, into their resilience factors. And that's what shifts the needles. That's what allows them to not have as many sensitivities and big reactions, and to be able to actually clear and detox and drain it out of their bodies and get it out.
Okay, this is good. I'm going to ask you, so when you are in a good state in your mind, does that keep is this one aspect of it, does it keep the blood-brain barrier pretty healthy and strong when you're in a good state of mind towards not?
Definitely. That's a big part of it. So
you could get a thinner blood-brain barrier if you're in that state.
As far as like a direct correlation with stress, it's not that like the cortisol or anything like that directly causes blood-brain barrier deterioration. It's more of just every single function in the body cannot optimally protect and create the resilience within that own organ system. So it's like the brain itself that is allowing in just more of the immune system to come in and fight whatever is going on within the brain. So there can be some latent infections that potentially were being protected, and then if blood-brain barrier gets affected, because now there are toxins in the body present, and then the function goes down because there's so much cortisol, or because there's neurotransmitter imbalances and hormonal imbalances, or whatever shifts, where the biochemistry shifts, then the physiology isn't able to sustain. It's secondary to that consciousness, neuroelectrical circuitry being off-regulated, unregulated, or dysfunctional.
Wow. So it'd be like if you had a stressful trauma and not making light of your situation, because my heart goes out to my parents divorced when I was younger. So you go through the trauma of like with custody battles. So it's almost like if you had your phone and somebody said you have to download this app today. Trauma. Okay, well that app's going to be so many megabytes or even a gig of your hard drive, and you're going to leave it on. You can't swipe it off for the rest of your life. And what does your phone do? That's what you're okay. So the energy is basically going to that app. The other ones have to take what's left over. Like, here's the dregs. You better just take what you got, right? Okay. Ooh, that'd be hard. So this is truly. So when you have that situation, we want to talk about consciousness. With the blood-brain barrier, you talk about resiliency. So I want you to go into this. Like you had the wreck, you go into near-death experience. Now, I'm not trying to I always say rabbit trail, but let's say you had really bad sinus infections, or you say resiliency, or some people have skin issues. So I just want to say these can all be like physical signs or manifestations of like what subconsciously or consciously, emotionally, spiritually has happened to somebody.
Yes. Well, yes, it can be. It's easy for us to defer to a root cause of environmental toxins or biotoxins, but we oftentimes overlook the fact that that's not the original root cause. What makes us less resilient is something neuropsychiatric that's going on under the scenes, neuroelectrical that's happening, where the electrical charges are dysfunctioning, and we get these psychosomatic. It's like if it happens in the brain, it happens in the body. Our body holds it, and it's the energy fields. They're all connected, and we have energy channels, energy points that then are impacted. Health goes down, health declines, and that's the true root cause. Because if we had the electrical fields supercharged and strong, then we have our boundaries in place, emotionally, mentally, physically, physiologically, biochemically. It's all the same thing. So we just have to restore that.
That's when you see, because with your research too, that people out there listening, is that you can definitely see neurological changes, functionality, just by the trauma. And some people think, well, it's just in my emotions. It doesn't matter. If it's in your emotions, you're saying I can see some definite physical changes within their neurology.
Yes, if it's in their emotions, at this point now there's an electrical and a magnetic component, so it's bringing in more into their field. Thoughts are just electrical, so the good thing is that a thought can happen and it can be fleeting, and then we can clear it from our electrical fields. However, if there is an electromagnetic component, then we're actually anchoring and centering it in somewhere. So emotions will oftentimes harbor in certain organ systems. And we know that these organ systems harbor them just because of the way that the electrical channels are running and just the way that it's supposed to be processing it. So like grief in the lungs, we need to process with breath work, with breathing deeply into the space and helping our emotions to clear from our heart space and then process through that. Or the liver with anger, we know that's going to affect the detoxification. And so we need to just optimize the way that we're moving the heat in the body and helping to clear. And then we help with the detoxification pathway. So there's all of these energetic aspects, emotional aspects, neurological aspects, and then of course the physiology will start correcting itself too.
Oh, so you, like a thought, I love that. It's like, so a thought would be like a random thought hits you. What if I'm not, what if I don't pass this test? What if this person doesn't like me? But if you harbor the thought enough, or if you're in the thought enough, then that becomes like it could become an emotion that gets into the electromagnetic field that actually can anchor down deep into your tissue.
Yes, and like attracts or manifests more of the same, because at that point now we're experiencing this to where it expands out. Like we know our energy fields expand out far around us, and those subtle energy fields, there are many different layers to them. And within those layers, what can happen is we hold certain space for the magnetism to pull in more of the light. So when you're leaning into joy and bliss and happiness and peace and all these other things and choosing that mindset while you're also shifting and clearing traumas, clearing stress points, which is very quick. It doesn't actually take a long time. Like one beautiful thing about this process is once we clear from the subtle energy fields and from the higher consciousness states, the electrical magnetic hold that a trauma will hold on us in our biochemistry and physiology can clear almost instantaneously. So we have certain ways of shifting that, transforming that, but it's like in those subtle energy fields that the power is.
That is great. I'm thinking of the next question because I got a couple thoughts from my head. So truly great. And when you have subtle energy fields, when we have a trauma and it creates an electromagnetic field, one thing you said, which I think is really cool, is that you said you hold the space to attract the like energy.
Yes.
So if you experienced trauma when you're young and custody battles, this is an example, not feeling protected, feeling unsafe,
yes,
that could have created a belief system that became an emotion,
yes,
that all relationships will turn out bad. That's just an example.
Definitely a good example.
A good example, like it's not going to work out. I've had to work through that in my family. It's not going to work out. That gets lodged in somewhere into one of your organs, and like maybe it's my lungs. In fact, I do have pneumonia. I've been working that through homeopathic. I got to tell you some cool stories.
Yes.
So you're doing breath work to actually exercise that organ because you're trying to consciously bring to the surface that belief system. Is that right?
And bringing in the energy, bringing in the light healing energy, absolute scalar waves or whatever else can come in. And that's oftentimes when we settle into the breath work, we're embodying that intention. So if we set our intention with the breath work that we're healing and we're transforming, transmuting, or clearing, then it does clear within that space. Wow. Yes.
Because I think I know we could have hour-long talks about this. I as people here know, like I'm a nerd about things. I'm not saying I'm a smart nerd. I'm just saying I'm a nerd about reading stuff.
Smart nerd.
But when you look into like attracts like, the reason we love like consciousness, and I'm going to go more into this. Like I want to talk about you too, like your conscious thoughts. If you had a space in your body, and let's say it was lodged in your lung, I'm asking, and the lungs had grief. Like somebody says, I don't cry. Why not? Just don't cry. Just don't see the need to cry. So let's say that happens. So you're saying that the field that comes off of the vibration pattern is a specific wavelength, frequency, and it's going to attract the same type. It's possible, right? You would attract the same grief in your life. Like it's like, why did I date somebody that was just like my dad or my mom or whoever? Because you've attracted the same form.
It oftentimes is like that. And then I also have some people that don't resonate with that. And what they do resonate with is that they oftentimes are spending so much energy putting up an energetic field or a like boundary, a protection, that it involves so much energy out, but they don't have much energy left for their other things that they need. So the organ systems that are supposed to be functioning optimally, those organ systems aren't able to work as well as they should, or the neurological system, maybe they have more brain fog, insomnia, they're not sleeping as deeply, they're not having a high enough HRV or like some of these other random measurements, and they see the differences, they can see the physiological changes. And it's because they're spending too much energy. That energy expenditure is not a direct return on the investment of their energy. It's like where should they put their energy or spend that energy? They're not spending it the proper way. So if we can get into that flow with the energetic aspects and clear some of those like magnetic points that are just anchored and held, and it's a rigidity that's preventing us from moving forward in an optimized way, or just having that healthy momentum towards what our actual true purpose, passion, and goals are, like within our spirit, authentically. That's what oftentimes just scatters and disperses the energy.
That is a really great point, because so if a person puts up a wall, and that could be the wall, like, I'm not going to cry because it didn't do me any good when I was a kid. It's not going to do me any good while I'm getting an adult. People out there are like literally going, yep, that's me. I'm not crying, right? So when in authenticity, if you start to look into it and trying to heal like that, trying to bring in some healing energy, I hope I say this right. If you see that kind of protective wall going up in your conscious state, like using you as an example.
Yeah, sure.
Did you find that there were certain things that you started to see that you could start doing, like the breath work, to like start to pull it out? Would somebody finally start to see that they would cry more?
Yes, definitely. And it's in that space of that authenticity comes with listening to yourself. Sometimes for the first time, really truly listening and what our needs are. Like, so those TLC times, like when you can just provide yourself that one wonderful opportunity to just relax in a hot bubble bath, or go outside and just take a walk just because you want to, or find your space of your sanctity and where you love to be and what you love to do, then those are the moments where the most healing happens, because we're in the quietude of our own thoughts, and we have to be alone with our own thoughts. So we have to work through any self-disrespect that we have and the lack of self-love. And then we lean into more self-worthiness, and that's where everything starts to heal.
So man, we're going to continue this another, because I know we're going to go run out of time. But so you would say self-worth and self-worthiness, self-value would be like telling your body, I am worthy to heal.
Yes.
Because if you didn't believe that, if you didn't think I was worthy to heal or I'm worth it, your body listen. It's like, well, I'm not going to send out my white blood cells, my red blood cells, or anything of that sort.
And it's that trust as well, because beyond just the worthiness, that's one aspect that someone can feel, but it's oftentimes lack of trust. And with that lack of trust, it's very easy for someone to feel like they're at the end of their rope. They've been chasing health for so long, or they've had all these concerns and health issues, or whatever it is that's just surrounding them. It feels overwhelming. If they can just lean into the trust and that hope and that faith in their body, the confidence in the innate healing power, of course they can.
Because, oh man, so trust is a big component.
Yes.
Would it be this way? Like, if I'm a big believer in heart talk.
Yes.
Hear that in Southern coming out, guys? Heart talk. All right. Okay, sorry, I'll stop. I'm a big believer in heart talk, but you would say trust would be like saying to yourself, no, I know what my body's telling me, but I have to perform this work and job and push myself to the limit to perform it. So your heart would not trust you.
Right.
Because you're thinking I should do this, but you're not really doing it. It's like a bad relationship, right?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Oh man, I got a bad relationship.
When our body doesn't feel like those little subtle signals of just how someone is feeling and how they're experiencing their life that day, if they're not listening to those subtle signals and then actually responding properly, then our body doesn't feel seen, heard, understood, and that it's going to start yelling, and that yells through big diagnoses.
That's where the physical manifestations of your distress, and we got to do another podcast, because I would think this, like, this may sound completely weird to some people, but in Chinese medicine, I do more recently now, in the last few months, is really talk to my body in the sense of I'll ask my heart, how are you doing? And people say, that's crazy. And I'm like, well, I'm me. Okay. But I'll say, well, how are you?
Yes.
Kidneys, are you talking to the heart? And then parts of the time, I think, guarantee you, if anybody else there doesn't believe me, there's going to be times when I will be, and you will too, if you get to a point and you go, my heart's not happy with me right now because you pushed me. My heart's like, you're pushing me. And then I think that communication is where you're talking about conscious world and separation, mind, body, and spirit.
Yes.
We're acting like a reductionist, like we're trying to separate our physical from our spiritual from our emotional.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes, absolutely.
And you can train your physiology through neuroplasticity.
Yes, through neuroplasticity, and then a much quicker way to do it is through quantum medicine and quantum neurology, because then we're able to shift timelines very rapidly. So we don't have to wait as long for the physiology and biochemistry to correct. We're able to create the energetic blueprints back to those original codes, and then that's when true transformation can happen beyond the limits of health, of how long it typically takes a health journey.
This is cool. So you're saying like the physical manifestation, okay, but we're going to do some more. Don't worry.
Yes.
Everybody out here, this is really good talk. So you're just saying if somebody keeps having a physical manifestation, like a chronic one, like a chronic cough, chronic ear infection, I know people say it's an infection, but you really have to look at some of the conscious, emotional programs that are programmed from some prior experience, probably.
Exactly. Healing that nervous system, just allowing it to correct itself. It knows what to do. It's very intelligent.
Okay, we're going to hear from people and get a hold of you.
Yes.
But I want to tell you, and not trying to take away from the whole conversation, but I'll say one thing. I had a friend of mine who has tinnitus, and this is how cool this is. Chinese medicine, the ears are always associated with the kidneys. Anytime you have tinnitus, in my opinion, you always look towards the kidneys because they represent. He got one of those new MRIs what do they call it?
Neuroquant?
I know, it's a whole body MRI. It's a big one.
Oh, Pernuvo. I did one too. It's amazing.
And he told me, I said, I think you probably have a kidney issue in that left, he said in the left ear. And he goes, oh, you know what? He goes, yeah, he goes, but I said, you probably have a kidney issue. He goes, oh yeah, they did that, and I have a little small cyst on one of my kidneys.
Yes.
And if you look at the left ear usually means a more logical, more male side, which means there has to be something male where that male didn't want to listen to something, or he had some kind of fear from the kidney, and he would agree with that. Now, I think that's what we need to have discussions about.
Let's do it.
Okay. All right. Tell people how to get a hold of you.
Yes. drleiladoolittle.com. Follow me on practically any social platform under that, Dr. Leila Doolittle.
Oh, man. Okay. She has a song written about her by Oasis. She probably don't even know what that means. There's a song. It's called Hey Layla. Okay. But really, we appreciate you doing this.
Oh, yes. This
is
wonderful.
It was fun. And I guess that everybody out there thinks we're woo-woo. It's okay. You guys know where to find her. I really appreciate it. And we're going to have another conversation. We'll set it up.
Yes.
Guys, reach out to her. Find out more about it. Get your emotions healed. We thank you. We really do.
Thank you.
From all of us here at the Ancient Health Podcast, Changing Life and Destiny, thank you guys so much for joining us. Talk to you soon.
That's a wrap for today's episode of the Change Life Destiny podcast. If you loved what you heard, share it with a friend and follow us for more bold conversations and breakthrough ideas. Ready to take the next step? Visit changelifedestiny.com to join the movement. See you next time, and keep diving in, learning, and leading the change.